Hello Minc Love fans, it's been another week of binging Netflix. I also watched Fit for TV, the reality of The Biggest Loser. Back in the day, The Biggest Loser was this weight loss contest where producers thought it was a good idea to make fun of folks who were overweight, who suffered from obesity, by turning it into essentially a game show. The show wouldn't be an easy watch for a lot of us today. I had to endure all the fat shaming of the contestants, but I also learned Dr. Robert Huizenga, or Dr. H, sued the New York Post for defamation. So of course, being an attorney at Minc Law, I decided to make a TikTok about it. My producer has informed me that this video will not just be airing on TikTok, but also LinkedIn, the funnest of all platforms, YouTube, Instagram, and wherever else you follow us on social media. And please like and subscribe. Back in June of 2016, Dr. H filed a lawsuit against the New York Post and also Biggest Loser contestant Joelle Gwynn, which, by the way, after watching the documentary, I didn't watch The Biggest Loser. I think I was too young to, and my mom's like, that just body shames people. The way they treated Joelle on the show was like horrible. So I'm not surprised that she wanted to speak out when contacted by the New York Post to tell her story. Now, according to the lawsuit, Joelle supposedly tells a New York Post reporter that an employee of The Biggest Loser gave her and other contestants yellow and black pill that made her feel jittery and hyper. Joelle also said she told Dr. H about the pills. He offered some lame explanation of why they got added to our regimen and said that it was up to us to take the pills. The New York Post also interviewed other contestants, and mind you, this is alluded to in the documentary. She basically says that she doesn't want her statement on the Netflix documentary to get her into trouble.
God, am I gonna get sued for this again by talking about people? Been there, done that. I'm sick of being sued people.
So I'm just assuming someone got sent a cease and desist from The Biggest Loser or the trainers or the doctors, because there's honestly a lot to sue over here. But anyway, the New York Post also interviewed other contestants who made similar statements that they passed out in Dr. H's office, that Dr. H knew contestants were using illegal drugs to lose weight rapidly, never tried to stop it, and that Dr. H refused to help former contestants who regained weight after leaving the show. Now, the Post did reach out to Dr. H, who responded through counsel that all statements were false and amounted to defamation. But the New York Post, being the New York Post, went ahead and published 3 separate articles about The Biggest Loser on May 22nd and 23rd of 2016. Joelle is quoted as saying that Dr. H told her that it was up to her to take the illicit pill that the show's producer had given her. He urged contestants to take meds and go hungry, provided illicit drugs to contestants and made them submit to questionable medical exams by the show's resident doctor. He told some disfavored contestants to ingest baking soda in the hopes they wouldn't lose the weight and would be eliminated from the show, which I don't know. Well, maybe this will get me in trouble for defamation, but if you have to ingest baking soda to leave a game competition, were you able to freely leave? You know, just saying, if you have to ingest baking soda after having signed a contract under less than ideal circumstances and not informed of your rights, leads to other sets of questions outside of our practice area. And hopefully Dr. H, The Biggest Loser, doesn't sue me for saying that, because it's an opinion here, which doesn't protect me from liability, but anyway. And he encouraged contestants to take street drugs while starving themselves and to lie about how much weight they were losing, despite the fact that there were weigh-ins, but anyway, who knows. Dr. H was very upset when the Post published this article. He claimed it harmed his relationship with current patients, potential patients, and perhaps most importantly, ABC, NBC, Bravo, MTV, Oxygen, Spike TV, Fox, CW Network, Discovery Network, Univision, CBS, WeTV, KTL, National Geographic, Netflix, and of course, TLC. There's some WeTV's the best, though. I don't know why they'd be airing The Biggest Loser. That's the show for the oldies. But anyway, now there's some tricky legal issues with jurisdiction here, so please bear with me for a moment. Jurisdiction is essentially whether a court can hear a case. You know, if you're going to be sued as a defendant, you have to have enough contacts with the state to reasonably anticipate being hauled into court in that state. So a defendant doesn't have control over what state they're being sued in. The plaintiff chooses the forum. So a defendant has a constitutional right to due process. Part of this due process right is to require a court to determine whether it has personal jurisdiction over an out-of-state defendant. If you live in that state, sorry, the court has jurisdiction to hear claims against you since you live there. So Dr. H filed a suit in federal court in Michigan, probably because that's where Joelle lived. And the New York Post argued that, it being the New York Post, that the Michigan court didn't have jurisdiction over them. Dr. H's team argued that you could still buy a subscription to the New York Post in Michigan, and there's like 10 Michigan residents that are getting the New York Post. But the court didn't think that was enough. New York Post is focused mainly on issues happening in New York. Even if Biggest Loser is filmed outside of New York, that would make more sense probably to file in California. Now, of course, he could sue Joelle Gwynn in Michigan, but let's be honest, Joelle, being exploited by The Biggest Loser, probably doesn't have enough money to collect a big judgment against. You want to go after the New York Post because they're really the deep pockets here. Dr. H, being Dr. H, probably on the advice of his counsel, decides to litigate in New York instead. But that lawsuit in New York is dismissed for failure to state a claim. This basically means that if you don't have a claim for defamation, meaning that you can't prove that it's a false statement of fact published with actual malice and amounted to some damage or was defamatory per se, the court's going to kick that claim out. Now, the court said Dr. H didn't adequately plead. The statements Joelle made were made with actual knowledge of their falsity, a term we like to call actual malice. Court gives Dr. H leave to file an amended complaint. Now, it was a little tricky to get a hold of all the filings since Pacer charges us by the cent. Sorry, but we cheaped out a little here in production. The mess that any docketing system, especially in New York, is. I haven't had a chance to look into whether Dr. H actually filed that amended complaint by the deadline. And I was also distracted by some other defamation news. Trainer Jillian Michaels is threatening to sue Netflix for defamation over allegations that she violated the show's rules by giving contestants caffeine pills to lose weight.
Do you have something you want to say about what's happened?
Caffeine supplement is significantly healthier than unlimited amounts of coffee.
This rules violation, Jillian has been penalized, and the white team will receive a 4-pound disadvantage.
I think that it wasn't handled perfectly.
The show clearly shows Jillian encouraging contestants to get on caffeine supplements despite the fact that they're doing rigorous exercise and taking caffeine supplements. Well, exercising is really dangerous for heart health. I'm not exactly sure what amounts to defamation and what was said about Jillian in the documentary, especially seeing as she does seem to admit on the show that she gave contestants some sort of caffeine supplements and was penalized by that 4-pound penalty on the show for doing so. But we will try our best to keep an eye on the news to see if there's a lawsuit coming for Netflix and if that suit survives judicial scrutiny.